we were to start the topic emergence of EIA. That's the emergence of environmental impact assessment. So here we'll try to look at how did it come about, or why did we have to start environmental impact assessment. So they in the US in the early 1960s, okay, something was clearly wrong from what was happening within the environment, most especially when it comes to use of insecticides and other materials that are used for to boost agricultural production, as the case may be. There was a publication by Rachel Carson titled Silent Spring. We shall see that very soon to understand how it all happened. So, look at this photo. You will see this is New York City as at 1966. You could see that there was a thick fog that buried the city, and it was devastating because surely visibility will be affected, and then even breathing will also be affected. So it's a serious problem when we look at consequences of human activities on the environment. These activities need to be checked. Then, in the industrialized economies, a lot happened as the nations try to mass produce goods and then even mass produce food in terms of agricultural production. So in London, a similar thing happened in 1952, where fog led to the death of about 4,000 people. So in 1963, Richard Carson published the document on silent spring, titled Silent Spring, and this showed the negative effects of DDT, the insecticide that was used to end mosquitoes, mostly in the temperate regions. So by 1966, a tragedy happened in the United States where a whole river caught fire, showing fully well that, yes, the water was heavily polluted with oil or a flammable material. So when we are looking back now, the question we'll ask ourselves is, what happened as at then, or what was happening then? Okay, so like we said yesterday, a lot of drivers and pressures affect the environment, or cause the environment to react or sort of go out of hand. So first and foremost, it's population growth. Population growth, like we discussed before, and population growth brings about pressure on use of natural resources. With the pressure on use of natural resources, the forests are cut down, and then to make room for urbanization, to make room for industrialization. So population growth is like the most important factor that leads to environmental change or environmental harm. So with that population growth, the number of human beings increase, so there's need to satisfy their needs and desires. So the use of natural resources increases, or the tapping of natural resources increases. Apart from that, the environment or the forests are cleared to make room for housing or other facilities that make for cities. And then in order to satisfy wants for goods and services, we industrialize. And this is premised upon the fact that each industry that is being established is looking for just one thing, and that is one thing they have in common: unrestrained profit. So it's just profit, profit, and profit. Okay. So when we put all this together, there is some unprecedented environmental damage that is being caused by our own hands, as we can see. Then, yes, we may say the problem is basically in the developed economies. But now the question is, why should we in developing countries care about this, or care about introducing environmental impact assessment. So the developed countries are the ones that are donors to us. So because of the fact that they have seen the realities or the damage that industrialization without adequate care for the environment has done to them, they now require that the agencies that give out these aids require EIA before they can now give you aid. Now, an example happened in Pakistan in the 1970s, where several Pakistani workers died because of negligence in the administration of pesticides. And this was on a USAID project. So USAID was sued by an environmental PVO, and then they now adopted environmental review procedures to comply with the National Environmental Protection Agency Act. So following that, every donor agency now has to require similar procedures. So there must be some level of environmental impact assessment before aid is granted to any nation. That is the background behind EIA being compulsory in developing nations. So we move forward, and then, sorry about that. Yeah. So they we are looking at examples from the developed world. So we have the example of the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969 from the USA. Okay. This policy came as a result of widespread recognition, okay, that some major environmental problems were created as a result of government projects. That's establishment of power stations, dams, reservoirs, and several industrial complexes. Okay. Now, oh, all right. Sorry, there's a lot of the slides are animated, so each time my hand just gets somewhere, it causes a problem. Now, the UNECE Convention on EIA, okay, adopted the transboundary context as far back as 1991, but this now became binding in 1997, okay, with the first EIA specific international treaty being signed. So I think there's something wrong. This slide is just proceeding. Please let me just check why the slide is behaving that way. Okay, I think that's the end of the slide. Sorry. That's the end of the slide. But what I want us to really understand here is why EIA came to be, or how EIA came to be. It's as a result of the fact that the developed countries experienced some devastating situations. And now this led to international collaboration in order to ensure that environmental impact is first of all determined before major projects are funded. And that is why we in the developing nations are being asked to provide environmental impact assessment, or what we now call environmental and social impact assessment, ESIA, before we are granted aid, or the donor agencies grant us funding for any developmental activity that we are about to consider. So that is all about the context behind EIA. It's a very short one. All right. So we move forward. If you have questions, you just drop them in the comments, and then we'll address them as we go on. So we are going to now introduce EIA as it is. So we all know EIA to be environmental impact assessment. It's not a new thing. Okay. So we have been able to so far set the tone for ASIA system. We have looked at the theoretical framework that governs EIA. And just now we've been able to look at how or why EIA came to be. So for now, we have two more topics before I round up with you today. And it's one of them is introduction to EIA, which will now continue before we move to assessment of ESIA, impacts and risk. So EIA, as the case may be, is a major tool that governments and even general societies lean back on so that they can be able to manage the environment sustainably. Okay, this helps them to identify, predict, and mitigate any impact that may result as a result of projects or developmental activities that have been embarked upon. So EIA is a tool, and then the tool is used to identify, it's used to predict, and it is used to mitigate environmental impacts. And that is the reason why it is called environmental impact assessment. So it's also basically a legal system that puts into consideration environmental dimension. So uh, it's not just about legal system per se, but a legal system that also considers our environment or the space where we live in. So it is considered a proactive management strategy with a goal to prevent significant negative impact. Now, this negative impact that comes as a result of activities and projects, and even sometimes products that we put into the market, other programs, plans, policies, and even legislative proposals that are being made. So we really need to understand how are each of these things, or how is each of these things going to affect the environment within a legal framework so that we are able to manage without causing distress. So, like I said, the aim of environmental impact assessment is to ensure effective management outcomes for development projects. That is quite true, okay? But there is some school of thought who are saying that yes, it has not really achieved its aim, all right? Because environmental management activities are not properly planned in EIA process, all right? But that is one school of thought. But there's one thing that we used to know. They said um, you are making progress if you don't remain in one place. So in as much as we have not remained in one place and continued business as usual, but we have adopted the fact that we are using EIA, it means at least we have understood that something is wrong and we are moving forward in the right direction. So there are many definitions behind EIA, and we're going to look at them one by one. Okay, but the thing is that yes, when you look at definitions, they are almost about the same, but just with little variations here and there. So, according to PADC 1981, environmental impact assessment is the systematic examination of the environmental consequences of projects, plans, and programs. This aligns with all we have been discussing earlier on. Okay. Then, secondly, there's the one by Sadler, 1996. Environmental and social assessment is a systematic process of evaluating. So those keywords are very important. Evaluating and documenting information on the potentials, capacities, and functions of natural systems and resources to facilitate sustainable development, planning, and decision making in general, and to anticipate, manage and manage the adverse effects and consequences of proposed undertakings in particular. Okay, so this is uh, another definition. Then moving forward, IFC have their own definition, and they say it's environmental impact assessment environmental assessment eradicates a project's potential environmental risks and impacts in its area of influence. So basically, all we have been looking at shows that the impact assessment is localized, and then every effect within that local area can be managed once we have an environmental impact assessment on hand. And the World Bank itself, as of 2017, posited that environmental and social impact assessment is an instrument to identify and assess the potential environmental and social impacts of a proposed project. So some of the keywords we can see from here, though they have not been made bold, include identify, assess, okay, potential environmental and social impact of a proposed project. Then the other keywords include evaluate alternatives, design, appropriate mitigation. Appropriate mitigation will be another key word, okay? Management and monitoring measures. So having an ESIA instrument would enable us to be able to find out where the problems are, okay, how the problems are going to affect, and then also look at alternatives, and then plan and manage, and also evaluate from time to time as the case may be. So generally, when we put this together, we can see that environmental impact assessment is a tool that can be used to determine the social, economic, and environmental impact of major developments, and then proposes measures to mitigate this impact. So basically, we use EIA to first of all know whether there is a social impact, know whether there is an economic impact, okay, and know whether there is an environmental impact. So these three things put together. So it's not just when we hear the word environmental and social impact, or environmental impact, or environmental assessment, it's not just about the environment alone, because like we said, within the environment lies the entities, or we as human beings. And we as human beings carry out economic activities within the environment. So it's in totality, social, economic, and environmental impact of this project or activities that are measured under environmental impact. Now, the IAIA, which is the agency that is responsible for impact assessment as a whole, considers ESIA or EIA as the process of identifying, predicting, evaluating, and mitigating the biophysical, social, and other relevant effects of development proposals prior to major decisions being taken and commitments made. Now, this is where there's a very important keyword being brought in, the word proposal. So it brings to limelight the fact that an environmental and social impact assessment is not, will I say, is not based on an ongoing project, but based on a proposed project. So when you are proposing a project, you must carry out the EIA or ESIA, as the case may be. And then with that, we are able to understand the effects that these activities we are going to carry out are going to have on the environment, on the social strata, and then other effects, okay, before the project is carried out. And then in that manner, once we know this impact, we now form the management plan in order to tackle or mitigate the effects that have been identified. Then another definition or general definition shows that it's a systematic process to identify potential positive and negative impacts on the environment. So this can be biophysical, socioeconomic, cultural, okay, that are associated with proposed activity. So the word proposed is very important here, as we can see. Okay, so also we can define uh, environmental impact assessment as a critical tool that is used to identify the environmental, social, and economic impact of a project prior to decision making. Okay, that just also sums it up the way uh, we have been saying all along. Okay, so it's just the same thing, but in a different language. So, putting this all together, we can see that EIA is a process that is systematic. And then three things. It's used to identify, predict, and evaluate. Three most important things in EIA. The environmental effects of proposed actions and projects. Okay. Now, like I said, and I've been saying, the environment is basically our physical, what we see physically, the biological part of the environment, and then even the social part. And this social part is also linked to the economic part as well. So normally called socio-economic uh, environment. So it is a planning and management tool for sustainable development. This one uh, is broad in this sense because we use it to identify the type, magnitude, and probability of environmental and social changes that may occur, okay, either directly or indirectly as a result of the project or policy we are to embark upon. And then we can also use it to design possible mitigation procedures. All right. So the term impact is used in EIA instead of effects of activities. Effects of activities is a clause, but impact is just a single word. So the question is, what is an impact? Okay, so an impact, the impact of an activity is a deviation or a change from baseline situation that is caused by the activity. So normally, most of us, maybe we understand things like land use cover change. We also understand aquatic environmental change and all that. So there are many changes that can be studied within our environment. And these changes actually stem from the impact of an activity. All right. So, but before you are able to measure the impact, you must know the baseline situation. So, for instance, if you are looking at land use cover change between, say, 1960 and 2026, you must first of all have an evidence to show what the land looked like as at 1960 before we're now saying, okay, there has been change along the line within every 10 years. This is how the land has changed. In that way, you are able to prove because you have a baseline. You use 1960 as your baseline. Now, if you also look at the aquatic environment, we have issues with mangrove forests that are depleted or removed for aquaculture activities or other activities, as the case may be. Now, for us to be able to determine whether mangrove forests are being lost or not, we must have a baseline map that shows the extent where the mangrove forest used to be before the current existing situation. So the baseline situation is the existing environmental situation or condition in the absence of an activity. So like I said, before urbanization, Nigeria was at a level of development as at 1960. So between 1960 and 2026, we pick Lagos as an example. How has the land use changed? Because Lagos is a rapidly expanding urban center. So we have to know what it looked like as at 1960 and what it looks like as at today. Okay, so the baseline is the key concept in environmental impact assessment. So, but one fact remains, okay? Impact can be of different magnitudes. Impacts can be of different magnitudes in the sense that some can be very significant, some can be not so significant, like and can be graded. It can be graded in that manner. But specifically, the EIA or ESIA must focus on the most significant impacts. Okay, so it is not worth the while wasting your time analyzing and even discussing impacts that are of less importance in the system. So it is important to focus just on the very significant impacts. And then, though it's not as if you ignore the ones that are less important, but as well, they can be mentioned, but most priority goes to the very significant impacts. So let's look at examples of important impacts. This list will show us the impacts that are important and those that must be focused on. Okay, so we look at the various aspects of the environment. In that table, that is the impact area, as you can see on the left. All right, then we'll try to give us examples of these impact areas in the right column of the table. So for the physical environment, examples include something like soil erosion, air and water pollution. These ones are very important impacts that must be mentioned in the ESIA, or focused on, sorry, in the ESIA. All right. Then biological impact area include destruction of habitats, then the loss of endangered species. That also can be termed loss of biodiversity. So destruction of habitats, that's the destruction of the natural homes of the animals and organisms that live within that area. So, but when we mention destruction of habitats, it's not just about animals alone, but also plants. Because when you destroy an environment, both plant life and animal life are affected. So the habitat is home to both plants and animals. So once destroyed, it affects both the plants and the animals. So endangered species are lost, or there's loss, significant loss in biodiversity. Then we have the social impact area, where we looked at displacement of communities and then loss of livelihoods. Okay, so um, there is something that goes with this. I usually like to explain to students the scenarios behind such things. Now, when you are displacing communities as a result of the introduction of a project, okay, you should be careful to understand the dynamics within their society and then why they live where they live and what they do as they live within that area. So if, for instance, you are bringing a new project to a riverbank, you should be able to know that these people rely on the river as a natural resource for income. So probably they are predominantly, say, fishermen. So by the time you're going to relocate them from that area, that's involuntary relocation now. They're moving them from that area to another area. And this area you are taking them to now becomes totally covered with land, the first thing that happens to them is that they have lost their means of what? Livelihood. So you must be able to understand the impact such project and then such decisions to be taken as a result of that project will make on local communities if they are being displaced. Then fourthly, number 4, we have health impacts. So there is also increased risk of disease because of poor sanitation or pollution, as the case may be. So when the environment is polluted with maybe gases or release of vapor that is to be envisaged as a result of the establishment of a project or an industry, then it predisposes the people to risk of disease, lung disease, and liver disease, kidney disease, all that put together can become a risk as a result of that project. Then there's also the economic impact area, the loss of farmland. Then there's impact on local markets and even tourism as well. So once you are establishing a project, you should also consider the economics of the people that live around there. Then in totality, you must look at cumulative impacts. So now this cumulative impact will now put together, okay, if there's an impact in the physical area, there's an impact in the biological area, social health and economic, all right? When we put all these together, okay, what is the combined effect, okay, of in terms of long-term degradation, okay, from combined effects of the multiple projects or activities that are being carried out within the environment. So we must be able to sum up the cumulative impacts of each of these impact areas as or vis-a-vis all the projects that are being carried out in the particular community or area we are talking about. Then we are now going to also want to look at examples of less important or the factors that are impacts that are minor. Sorry, these ones can be mentioned in the EIA briefly. It's very important they are mentioned. It's not that they should be overlooked or ignored. Okay, one is temporary noise. This is as a result of the operation of machinery for short durations. Okay. Then secondly, dust in remote area. Okay, but this one settles quickly and does not affect communities. But currently, I think in Makodi at the Wilcombe roundabout, there's a lot going on there now, and then there's a lot of dust in that area. As a matter of fact, people who are engaged in livelihoods around there, they have to come there every day and then they have to inhale all the dust and everything. And sometimes we wonder whether the contractor is even moved because sometimes they water, sometimes they don't water the area. But these are part of the problems that we envisage when we are about undertaking projects. And then the EIA, we should have been able to take care of that so that the management procedure is well carried out, or probably there is no M&E as the project is being done. Then we also have visual changes. All right. Now, visual changes can happen in isolated locations. Okay. And then probably, okay, that it doesn't really, there are no, there is no, would I say, organism or people that will feel offended or feel bad when they see that there is a change in the visual appeal of an area. Okay, but it's still worth mentioning in the EIA. Then there could also be minor traffic increase. All right, this one can happen on roads with already low vehicle flow. right? So we can see that as well when we look at the Wurukum situation where there's a traffic bypass. So it's now all traffic go on one way. And then when you go on one way, if you're going from North Bank to Otupo Road, you have to go through the one way and then go through the road, a minor road between that cuts through the behind the small Benue Links Park down towards UBA junction there. So this road has become busy as a result of the bypass of traffic. Then we also have short-term camp waste. Okay, so people or contractors that you carry out projects usually camp within or nearby the area. So if there is no proper disposal of waste that is being generated in that camp, then there is going to be a problem. But this also has to be mentioned so that proper adequate management procedure is planned for. All right, so how do we really find out which uh, uh, impacts are significant and which ones are minor, right? So there are some tools that we use to identify whether an impact is significant or whether it is minor. The first tool is a checklist, okay? A checklist. This is a predefined list of possible environmental impacts. So once you have a list, all right, you look at them, all right, and then try to see whether something is missing in the list or not. Okay, but it is very important that you make sure there is no one that is overlooked or made, and there's no oversight in terms of the list that you have made. All right. So an example of a checklist is the environmental impact matrix or scoping checklist. This is used for screening initially, okay, and then brainstorming of all potential impacts. All right, this uh, this kind of activity, or screening activity and brainstorming activity, can be carried out using other tools as well, right, including mind maps, the fishbone diagram, and other things. So this can be used to determine the importance of uh, an impact. Secondly, we have the impact matrix or impact matrix, also called the Leopold matrix. This one is a grid matching uh, project action with environmental components. So basically, it's like, will I say, if this is happening, this is where it's going to impact. All right. So if there's a project action taking place, say for instance, we are clearing we bring a bulldozer to clear the path for the construction of the road. Okay. So which environmental component is it going to affect? So there's a kind of one on the left and one on the right to be able to match the action to environmental component where it affects. Okay, so this particular grid or matrix helps us to know the magnitude and importance of each interaction. And then this is useful because we cannot determine ranks of the impacts. We can determine ranks of the impacts, okay, by looking at it and then visually and according to its significance. So this ranking of impacts can be done according to significance using the impact matrix. Thirdly, we have scoping tools. These tools are used in the scoping phase to filter out irrelevant issues. As the time you are trying to find out, okay, what extent can we go, or what extent, or where are we going? You cannot use this to filter out issues that are not of particular interest or particular concern. Okay, so to do this, you must consult stakeholders. So there's a need for a public opinion. Then experts are also needed. And then you also need to consult with regulatory agencies. So it's important to know the people who are going to be affected. It's important to know experts in that area. And then it's also important to have the regulator being present in order to carry out the scoping phase. All right. So this one, with this, you are now zooming into or onto the likely significant impact, because you have moved from the other two, which is the matrix and then the checklist, to this point now. Then fourthly, we are looking at weighting of significance, okay, or the significant criteria and then weighting. So we are trying to find out, okay, because not all impacts are significant in the same manner. So we try to put the most important first and then the least important last, as the case may be. So in order to carry out the significance weighting, we look at some scales, all right? We look at scales, we look at the magnitude, we look at duration, we look at frequency, reversibility, then sensitivity of the affected environment. So we use these six criteria, or five criteria, to judge or justify why some impacts are more critical than others. I think magnitude, duration, frequency, reversibility, and sensitivity, as we have mentioned. So we can use them now to rank the impact and then understand which ones are more important than the others. Number five, we can also use GIS mapping. GIS mapping. Yeah, something I forgot to mention about weighting. Weighting can either be quantitative or qualitative. Okay, so this is very important. So in the area of quantitative weighting, a lot of mathematical models are in place that we can use to determine the weight of a particular impact. So if you, those that are used or those that are familiar with statistics, they are even familiar with principal component analysis and factor analysis, they will be able to relate to what I'm trying to say. So once you are able to feed the computer with relevant data, okay, that shows the impact of certain factors, the computer will be able to use its calculative ability to determine the weight of each of the factors and give you a result. That is the idea of quantitative. Qualitative, yes, is basically done by human beings, but this also requires expert judgment, as the case may be. So we go back to GIS mapping. This one uses spatial data. Okay, that is data that is accumulated over space and time as well. Okay, so it uses spatial data to identify sensitive receptors. Okay, so if you are about to embark on a project or activity, right? It's usually an input output thing. If we look at it critically, it's an input output thing. So if you input resources, some output is generated in the process, right? So waste is also generated. And at the end of the day, the environment is the one that receives the waste. It's the environment that also receives the inputs as a result of the project you are carrying out. So at the end of the day, where does it go to? All right. So where does it go to? So you have to identify where the materials that are waste are going to, where your input, okay, is going sensitive receptors. This is that if the materials discharged go to cause some negative effects. Then you also look at proximity to protected areas or vulnerable communities. Okay, so it's important if you're about to set up a project. Hello?
Yeah, Monica. Hey, naga henu subject now.
Hello? Someone is talking. Hello, is there a problem? That's right.
Yes, sir. I don't know why.
Yes.
Okay, let me try to mute
All right.
every other person again.
Okay.
Okay, so you can unmute yourself.
All right, thank you there.
Yeah, good now. Yes, sir.
All right. So and then let me ask at this juncture whether I think I'm audible enough, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm trying. Okay.
I know it was just from the beginning that I think network was shaky and fluctuating, so but it has finally stabilized now.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
all right. So going ahead, we use GIS mapping, okay, to locate and prioritize spatially significant impacts. So I don't know, let me just give this example. Say, for instance, you want to establish a pig farm, all right? You look at the idea of proximity, okay? So you would not establish the pig farm to near or close to a Muslim community because that is a sensitive activity to them, all right? So you try to use GIS mapping or identify communities that would not or that are sensitive to the project you're about to carry out. Okay, so yes. Number 6, we have expert judgment and multi-criteria analysis. So we bring together stakeholders, we look at professionals, and then even the regulators. Example like NESRIA, for instance, or the Environmental Protection Agency. All right, so this involves the use of a scoring system. They can use this to rank impacts by importance. Okay, so this is also where there's a lot of room for research, so that with the emergence, I will try to enlighten us or try to open our eyes to something, so that some of us at the end of the day, maybe when we are doing our research or something, we could also pick that up. With the emergence of artificial intelligence, I did inform us earlier that we can use the computer by using a factor analysis or principal component analysis, okay, to also determine significance or rank the impact, okay. Then this number 6 also has to do with expert judgment. So now we can compare how do the humans, okay, rank the impact, and then how does the computer rank the impacts, because the computer ranks its own based on figures and numbers that was generated over time. And then expert judgment also relies on the knowledge they have or they have accumulated over time as well. So we can determine which one, whether there's a perfect match between computer generated impact scoring and then the expert judgments and multi-criteria generated scoring. So this particular one, MCA, is used for complex projects, okay, where value judgments are needed. All right. So 7, we look at public consultation and stakeholder input. All right. So this uh, brings us to the fact that most times uh, when we are carrying out projects in the past, we don't look at the look or indigenous knowledge. Okay. But the fact remains that those that have lived within their own environment over several years, they can give you insights. Okay. Insights. They can give you insights to things that you as an expert may overlook. Okay. So we can use this public consultation and stakeholder input to understand social and cultural sensitivity of impact. Okay. Then 8, we can use cost benefit analysis and environmental evaluation. So this one is monetary in nature, or it quantifies the impacts according to monetary value. Okay, so we can compare between benefits and environmental costs, which is more. So if the benefits are higher than the environmental costs, okay, then the project can go on. But as well, it doesn't mean that we will be negligent to the extent that we don't manage the impact, okay, because it's very important to also manage the impact in as much as the benefits outweigh the cost. So those are the tools that can be used to identify or rank impact so that we can identify which are significant and which are minor. Then globally, environmental impact assessment is domiciled now in more than 100 countries. And these countries have policies, they have guidelines, and they have programs, okay, on EIA. So it is no longer a developed nation thing, right? Both developed and developing nations are uh, using EIA, okay? So EIA is a tool that has been embraced by many multilateral aid agencies, including our own World Bank. Okay, moving on. The process of EIA. Okay, there are some certain things we need to understand, or principles that we need to understand so that it can guide us in carrying out an EIA. All right, so there are 5 of them here. So the process of conducting an EIA needs to be purposive. Okay, so by the word purpose, it means that there must be an end, or there must be a goal. So this means that it must meet its own aims and objectives. Secondly, there must be a focus. Okay, so there's something that is the crux of the matter. So you look or you focus basically on the effects, okay, that matters. Thirdly, it must be adaptive. So for EIA to succeed, it must be able to, okay, for instance, behave like amoeba, which can change its shape. Okay, so in essence, it should be able to respond to issues and realities that are occurring or existing in the area where it is being carried out. So there must be element of participation. So it's not just the project team per se, but it also involves the stakeholders, other stakeholders, the experts in that area, local community, and the regulatory agencies put together. So for it also to make meaning and then command integrity, the EIA must be transparent, because this is very important. So if it's not transparent, integrity is lost. So for it to make sense, it's core or mode of approach should be clear and easily understood. It's like when we say they define conscience as an open wound, the same kind of idea behind this. Okay, so it should also be rigorous. All right, it's rigorous in the sense that it employs best practicable methodology for to be able to maybe meet its aims and objectives. There must be a level of seriousness or a level of uh, activity such that the activity being carried out or its uh, major effort being put in to carry out the EIA is not just a wishy-washy kind of thing, but it uses rigorous testing and rigorous methodology to achieve its aims and objectives. And it must also be practical. So, yes, impacts are there. Yes, activities must be carried out. So, the impact areas and then the parts of the environment or where they actually affect. Okay, this is where the practicality comes in. So there must be a way of ensuring that the impact area and then where it is impacted, there is some mitigation measures that should work, not just mitigation measures because you want to put it on paper, but the mitigation measures should work and then be practicable enough to mitigate the impact, okay, on the impact area. Then it also must be credible. Yes. Thank God we are all here. We are developing your minds. We are now producing the critical mass of knowledge required to now pilot Nigeria's environmental sustainability sector. So carry it out with objectivity, carry it out with professionalism. You have been taught now the processes, you have been taught the methods, you have been taught the tools. So for you to be able to maintain a credible EIA process, you must be able to approach it with all professionalism put into it. And it also must be efficient. So we are looking at alternatives or we are looking at mitigation measures. And these mitigation measures have alternatives. So it's either we use this or we use that. But the problem now is that each of the solutions or each of the measures for mitigation come at a cost. All right, but the one with the least cost and then can also achieve the best result should be the option to be chosen within the environmental impact assessment document. Okay, so this is very important. So putting this together, okay, the good EIA practice or getting to know the principles of good EIA practice, we should be able to understand that EIA needs to be applied to all proposals that have significant impact. So if we are probably constructing a hydroelectric power station, yes, it means we're going to construct a tank that is going to have significant impact on the downstream area of the river. So now the question is, right, what are the impacts? And then identifying the significant impact as well as the minor impact is very important. Okay, so first of all, knowing that the hydroelectric power station is going to have a significant impact is important. But the question now is, what is the significant impact? So EIA is very important for such kind of gigantic projects that should have significant impacts on the environment. Then It is, we are also going to understand that it is important that if you are carrying out an EIA, I think, okay, we are carrying out an EIA. The EIA should begin early in the project cycle. Of course, even at the design phase. That's what we have been saying all along. So the EIA must be done at the design phase. So even if it is project that is looking for funding from external sources or project that is being funded internally, okay, there must be an EIA. Somebody is saying the audio is not clear. Because I'm trying
It's
to also
clear now.
interface.
It's clear now. It's clear now.
I'm
It's clear
interfacing
now.
with the comments as they are coming in.
It's clear now.
Okay, I guess their own location may be affected as a result of network. So please, if you are having issues with audio, let me just enlighten us. If you have issues with audio, check whether a call came in when you were on the lecture. So if the call came in, you may have to do some resetting to get your audio quality back. Class rep. Class rep.
Yes, sir.
I think somebody mentioned what can be done when you get a call coming in while you are receiving the lecture. I don't know who is
I
that.
did.
Maybe the, okay, please enlighten us again or enlighten them again so that we can move forward.
Okay, what I said is at times a call comes in and you sometimes busy your call. That actually takes your volume to makes your volume to become very low. So what you do if you have an earpiece, if you have an earpiece that is at the cord, this corded earpiece, you can insert it into the earpiece and listen with it over some time. By the time you remove it out, by the time you take the cord out, your volumes resets itself back to normal. I think
Okay.
basically that is the one. That is the one I know.
All right. Yeah, it's okay. If there's any other person with let's say, sorry to say that, with another solution that can be better than this, you let us know. Then we can
Just
also
raise
try
your
to.
hand up and you'll be allowed to speak.
Okay, so we move on. Now, for to have a good EIA or to effectively carry out EIA in good practice, you should be able to, the EIA should be able to address relevant environmental, social, and health impacts. Okay, so I think I've been mentioning this also often. The environmental impacts, we have mentioned a whole lot of them. And then the social impacts as well, we mentioned health impact also. So environmental impacts, like we said, can range from things like soil erosion, air and water pollution. Okay, the social impacts we said before includes relocation as well as a loss of livelihoods. Okay, health impacts, of course, that one we don't need to mention it. Okay, once it happens, we begin to know that yes, something has really happened or something has changed within our system. So the EIA should also identify and take account of public views. Okay, the EIA should identify and take account of public views. Okay, so if you are creating, if you are creating a project and the project is linked to the environment and then it also affects people or the people and then the places surrounding the project, it's very good to also seek out the opinion of people around that area. So there's need to have public opinion or stakeholder opinion, okay? It has to be participatory in nature so that you can gather relevant knowledge that can guide you in making the right decisions while you are carrying out your impact assessment, okay? Now, the totality of the EIA process should result in a statement of impact and mitigation measures. So it's like from this is the impact, this is what can be done, okay, to relieve the impact. So there must be a kind of impact or remedy arrangement within the environmental impact assessment. This will now facilitate informed decision making and then the setting of conditions so that impacts are mitigated. Okay, so EIA has some core values. Right? I think I mentioned this earlier. Integrity is very important. Okay, the EIA process should conform with agreed standards. Okay, integrity is very important, and that is why it's mentioned at the first. Then utility. All right, there must be information that is practicable or decisions or management recommendations that is actually practicable. Okay, so it should be able to provide balanced, credible information that can assist decision makers or decision making processes. Right. Then the EIA is also premised upon the value of sustainability. All right. So EIA process should result in environmental safeguards so that we can leave the environment in a better condition for the coming generation. So what does the EIA? What does the EIA do? So a lot we have said about the EIA. Okay, I've looked at tools to guide us in doing the EIA. We have looked at the core principles and the core values and all that. So what the next question we'll ask ourselves, what does the EIA achieve, or what is the goal of the EIA? So first of all, EIA is used to identify, okay, the activity and the environment in which it may be what? Implemented, okay? It's used to identify, okay, the activity and the environment in which it may be. It's used to identify the impact of the activity, okay, and the environment which it may be implemented. As an error there, okay. Secondly, it is used to predict the impact of each activity on the different components of the environment. So first, you identify the activity. Secondly, you predict the impact of each of the activity. And thirdly, the EIA should be able to evaluate, that is qualitatively and quantitatively. It should be able to tell us the significance of these impacts and then also prefer alternatives or develop or propose alternatives to these activities or impacts. Now, fourthly, the EIA should be able to communicate these impacts to decision makers and affected communities and generate alternative course of action. Now, a very important factor is this idea of communication. So once you're able to write things down and the language is clear, as in, okay, this impact, this mitigation strategy, okay, this impact, this mitigation strategy. Now, this will now enable decision makers and even the affected community to also look at alternative courses of action. Okay. Now, but this is, if we reason back to yesterday's lecture, we can see that when it comes to the precautionary principle. Okay, this one may not apply because we cannot actually determine an impact, okay, based on what we don't really know yet. But we can as well, okay, look for measures that can be like avoidance measures that can be clearly communicated as well, okay, so that communities can also generate alternative courses of action. Then, lastly, the EIA provides the basis for project monitoring and evaluation. So once we know the expected impacts, once we know where these impacts are going to affect, we'll know where to monitor and we'll know what to evaluate. So without the impacts, without the environment where these impacts are going to happen, we would not know where to monitor and we will not even know what to evaluate. So for instance, we are looking at soil erosion. Surely we'll monitor the soil or we'll monitor the land. And it will not be a question of monitoring water. So we'll be evaluating the changes in the size of gullies and the size of the loss of volume of sand from an area, as the case may be. So, what are the advantages of environmental impact assessment? We have 8 of them here on this first slide. Lowered project costs in the long term. So once you know that, yes, there's an impact, and then you know the mitigation strategy. And then we also remember that we said that for the mitigation strategy, they can be determined based on cost. So once we know that there's an alternative strategy at a lower cost that will achieve better mitigation than the other one, right? It now contributes to the lowering of costs in the long term. Secondly, increase project acceptance by the public and key stakeholders. So once you know the environmental impact of a project, you know the social impact of a project, of course, people who can read or people who understand, or even if they don't understand and you're able to explain to them in simple English or simple terms, they will surely accept it. And then the most important group are even the key stakeholders, because once they are able to see that, yes, this is actionable, of course, acceptance becomes very easy. Then there's also improved project design and siting. All right. So in actual sense, there are cases where industrial layouts are fashioned out or determined based on activities that are carried out by, say, town planners and other experts. Okay, so, but once we are able to have, or once they have the environmental impact assessment, okay, they will be able to carry out, they'll be able to design and site projects more effectively than before. Okay, so we move on to the fourth advantage, more informed decision making. So now, once you have an environmental impact assessment document before you, it's like you have opened up everything about the project. So you now know what is going to be done. If this is done, this is what is going to happen. The impact areas are there. The affected, the places where they affect within the impact areas are also listed there. So you now have a greater picture, a better picture of the project and its impact. So decisions you are going to make are based on the document that is before you. And then secondly, since you know that there's significant impact and then less significant impact, yes, you work more on the significant impacts and that makes you a better decision maker compared to the non-informed or the ill-informed where there is no EIA. Then there's also the advantage of more environmentally sensitive decisions. So where you are to take a decision to control uh, gully erosion, for example, okay, you know that based on the fact that there's an environmental impact assessment showing that, yes, if we cite this particular project here, this activity is going to take place. And once this activity takes place, like I said before, there's input and output. Which part of the environment receives the output? So you make environmentally sensitive decisions, knowing fully well the part of the environment that receives the output. That output can be negative, it can also be positive. But the one with the significant impact is the one that has the negative impact, or from the a negative impact from the output. Okay. So next we have increased accountability and transparency. Okay, during the development process. Yes, integrity, transparency, they all go together. Integrity, accountability, transparency. These three will go together. So once you have the EIA document, and the EIA document is premised on the core value of transparency, like we said earlier on, and credibility as well. So the product or the document itself is now produced. And based on the fact that the experts that produce them, as we are developing all of you now, are going to be credible, are going to be accountable, are going to be transparent. Okay. Then, of course, development in Nigeria would also enjoy that level of credibility and that level of transparency. We also have improved integration of projects into the environmental and social setting. So, if I'll give an example, though it's not about the environment, but I'll give an example. Now, in the time past, the central bank started in the 90s, if I can remember. They started something 90s, the late 90s and early 2000s. They started something that has to do with the consolidation of banks. Okay, so and the banks that could not meet up the minimum capital base were shut down. And but something was happening then. The shutdown process was abrupt in such a way that you wake up in the morning on say Thursday, you walk into a bank, you do your business, you get out. On Friday morning, you come to the bank only to see police everywhere, and then the whole place is shut down. That is quite abrupt. Okay, so later on, things started changing after they discovered that there was chaos as a result of that policy. So what they started doing now was, okay, if banks cannot meet up the minimum capital base, they now introduce the merger and acquisition option, so that before the set date where these banks were supposed to meet that minimum capital base, if they cannot meet it, they have the option of quickly running to other banks for acquisition or mergers, so that that idea of abrupt closure of banks now stopped. So if you observe nowadays, you don't see that happening. Rather, what you see is the quiet merger and acquisition of banks, because the initial approach generated a lot of chaos. So it's the same kind of example I'm trying to prove here. So once you have a process or where you have an impact of an action and you know the mitigation strategy, then you are able to now integrate the activity into the social fabric, okay, and into the environment or into the community where it is supposed to be cited better than if you just carry out haphazard operations. Then, lastly, on this slide, we have reduced environmental damage. So, this is quite simple. Once you have mitigation strategies, once you have plans, okay, that are now geared towards addressing the challenges or the impacts of the activities that are going to be carried out. Okay, then you will be able to mitigate the damage, and that means that you're going to have reduced environmental destruction within the country. So, in essence, all right, once you have good environmental management, it is akin to having a good project management. So the good project management, okay, elucidates or creates good environmental management. So it's complementary. They two go hand in hand. All right. So, but knowing fully well, every project has some components. The social component, that's talking about the people and the local community, indigenous people's knowledge and all that put together. Then the engineering component, that is the execution itself, the people that carry out the project, people that carry out the building or they carry out the execution of the project that has been planned. Then we also have the environmental component. So the social component initially existed in the environmental, in the environment before the project came in. And this project is being implemented by the engineering component. So this foreign one coming in must be able to blend with the social component and the environmental component so that we can have good environmental management. Else, there is a problem. That's where the environmental impact assessment, okay, helps us to bridge that gap. So with that said and done, thank you for your listening time. We may take questions and then leave. I think topic 5 is the one we'll take in the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. So we can take questions and comments. Class, we can take questions and comments.
Questions
Okay,
and
so
comments.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
I'm
there are
checking
there are some questions in the chat group.
yes, I'm checking it now. I'm checking it
Yes, sir.
now. Yes.
From
There's one by Henry.
Okay.
There's one by Henry Cato. Okay.
I think before that there
Before
was
that, right? Okay. Around what time?
Yeah. Okay, I know I'm there. I'm there myself. Mr. Dapal will be his relevant. Good morning, dear doctor. Questions.
Around
How
what
can
time
a person...
Okay.
Okay, that is I'm trying to read it out.
Okay, go ahead.
The time is not showing.
Okay.
Question number 1. How can a person become part of an EAI team?
Okay.
Number 2.
All right. Okay.
How can a person become a consultant in EAI? Number 3. Give us example of firms or organizations that carry out EAI. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Yes. What's his name?
Questions from Evans, Mr. Evans.
Evans. Okay.
Dapa Wubis.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So the first question is, how can one become a member of an EIA team? Okay. So the first thing first, you are, Mr. Evans, you are in the first step. And that first step is this knowledge you are acquiring now, or the professional or formal education you are acquiring now. Okay. So it's like specialized training. All right. Then you can, from there now, you are required to register with NEMA or other certifying bodies. So you must be able to, but in cases like yours, since you are coming up, it is important you first of all seek out agencies, okay, that carry out EIA, and then probably, I think now, are you doing your service now or not? When are you doing service? Classwork.
That will be, I think, in between our first semester and our second semester break.
Okay, yeah. So
First semester
probably
break in between.
once you seek them out, okay, then you'll be able to probably, all right, join them and then do your service there. Okay, there are a lot of them. So it's just that we, uh, if you go to NESFIA website, you will see a list of accredited environmental consultants. All right, so there are lots of them. So I can't be mentioning them, but the way out is just go to NESFIA website and you will see a list of the accredited consultants. All right. Then the third one, he said, how can
The third one says, give us example. Okay, I think
uh-huh.
you've answered all the question. Or
Okay,
answering you, give us example of firms or organizations that carry out AIA.
yes.
And
Go to
Dr. Kefre Esan,
okay, all right,
Kufre, Kufre
okay,
Esan has this question.
okay,
What is the distinction between projects that require EAI and the
okay,
ones that does not?
okay, okay. So yes, the uh, the fact is that if you have a project with substantial uh, that can cause substantial changes in the environment, then there is need for you to have an EIA. Okay, but if it is not going to cause substantial changes in the environment, now take note. We have talked about impact areas and then the particular part of the environment where they affect. Then we also try to look at tools for identifying significant impact and then minor impact. So if you run all this and then you discover that all your own impacts are minor impacts, okay, then of course there's nothing significant. All right, you may not necessarily need an EIA, but for credibility, accountability, and transparency, you could still have the EIA. All right, so it's very important. So who is next?
There is another
Okay,
question there, the one from Kato Henry.
okay,
Kato Henry says, Sir,
yeah,
could you kindly clarify how cumulative impacts are identified and evaluated, particularly when multiple projects are involved in the same area?
okay,
Yeah, how cumulative impacts are identified and evaluated,
all right,
flowing from multiple projects involved in a particular area.
okay. Um, I think, but hold on. Kufre is still raising his hand, so let's finish with him before we go. Can you
Okay,
release him?
Kufre,
Yeah,
Kufre,
can you release
okay.
him?
You can unmute your mic, Asian, Mr. Asian.
Okay. Thank you, my classroom. Thank you, sir. I really
Yes.
enjoyed the lecture. Please, sir, I really have concern about this issue of EIA. Okay,
Okay.
one, that you've talked about those projects that doesn't really have significant impact. Because I know
Yes.
I'm from a Bible state, I'm based here. I know even churches here, they require churches, if you want to build a church and they say you should do EIA, then if you want to
Okay.
build a gas station as a fuel station, they say you should also do EIA. So
Okay.
considering the impact in terms of church, maybe school, and maybe gas station, for me, it does not really have a significant impact, because at most church could be in terms of noise, then maybe in terms of you don't have a good car park, it may cause nuisance, block road, things like that. But they still required in my state, I don't know what other places, that such a project should have environmental impact assessment. Then number two, which is the one that gives me major concern, to the best of my knowledge, government projects, they hardly carry out EIA. Is there any law that can enforce government to also be implementing the EIA policy? I know it's only private projects that government will emphasize that there should be EIA, but most of the projects carried out by the government here, there's no EIA. And most of the oil company, like the recent one, an oil company operating in one of the local government within my state, and at the point, the community had issues with them. So I was also consulted. I went there and I asked for EIA. In fact, I went to federal ministry, I went to state ministry, there was no EIA. But I was made to understand that they had EIA for maybe a nearby local government. So can EIA of a particular local government be used in another local government, or should it be site specific? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Essen, we can't hear you again, sir.
Oh, but
okay. Okay. Should I come again?
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead, so everybody can
okay. I'm saying whether there is any law that should enforce the government to implement, because to the best of my knowledge, most of the government projects here, they don't have EIA, but they only enforce when people, the private sector, want to implement projects. Then two, there's a situation whereby an oil company operating here had issue with the community, and I was consulted. So when I went, the first thing I requested was the EIA, and I got to know that there was no EIA because I went to Federal Ministry of Environment and even the State Ministry of Environment to do verification of the EIA, because I felt that was the starting point. But when I got there, there was no EIA. When I confronted the company, they said they did EIA, at the nearby local government. So the question is, can EIA of a particular local government be used in another local government? Is it not site specific? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Kwashi,
hello.
Just hold on while Kwashi, you just hold on while I finish with Kufri. Then we'll continue. Yes, Etienne, I think I know, particularly I'm familiar with some areas in Uyo. There's, I can't remember the name of that place. There's one place where there's a deep gully that is trying to be filled up. And I think that's on the way coming towards, what have I forgotten the name of that place? This Calabar Road area. I'm trying to remember the name. This old Calabar Road area. Kufre, are you there? Can you help me out?
I think I may need to ask him to unmute again.
Yes, please.
Kufre, can you raise your hand up so that, or let me run quickly to you.
Yeah, please run to
Okay,
him.
Kufre, you can unmute yourself. Hello, Chief Kufre. Unmute. Okay, you can continue.
Let's just leave that. I can continue. So what I'm trying to say is, EIA is site specific and also scale specific. So
okay, somebody does say Oron area.
Okay, sir. So, sir, you were talking about the old Calabar Road.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes. Call the name again.
Somebody say Oron area.
Oh,
no, it's
yes.
not Oron.
Can you hear me?
It's not
the
Oron.
lecturer.
You called one name.
Okay, Mr.
Hello?
Kufure, continue. Yes.
Yeah, you called one name.
No, he said Oron. Someone
Oh,
stated it in a group.
okay. But I don't think so. It's within Uyo. It's within Uyo. Coming from, it's just that I can't remember the name. The name escaped my head. But okay, let's just continue. What I'm trying to say is that AIA is site and scale specific. Okay, so just like I said before, the scale and magnitude of the project as well as the site. Okay, for instance, even if it is a church you're about to establish in that area where there is serious gully erosion, all right, it's common sense tells us that yes, since that is a very sensitive location, you just have to do an EIA so that the building you are trying to erect, the drainages it is going to, or the natural flow of water it's going to affect and all that must be determined so that we can really know the impact of that building before you put it down there. Otherwise, it goes again to affect the gully that is being controlled as we can, if we really picture that. Okay, then I don't know if I've done justice to that, but quite simple. Uh, if your name is Kufre Essien, okay, you cannot use uh, uh, you cannot use uh, Ididion Effiong's certificate. I believe you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, your own certificate is your certificate. So you cannot carry out or carry EIA that was done on a project in Oron and bring it to Uyo that you are trying to do the same project there. The environments are different. So EIA is site and scale specific. Okay. Then we go to Henry Cato. Henry Cato is saying that could you kindly clarify uh, how cumulative impacts are identified and evaluated? Okay. So I think there's there's really no difference between identification of cumulative impacts and then just the impacts that we say. Uh, we've talked about scoping, we've talked about identifying the uh, significant impacts and all that. Then we also, for you to be able to know cumulative impact, it's important to know baseline situation or baseline scenario. So that once you know baseline scenario, say like we know the situation in 1960, and we are looking for the situation now in 2026. Okay, that is the idea of cumulative. So between 1960 and 2026, what has happened over time, year by year, added together. All right. So you do a scoping, all right, both spatially and temporally. Okay. Then you identify all the activities, the multiple projects, you identify them so you can list them. And then they are each and individual project, the impact they have. So you put that together, okay? The ones that are common or shared in between two or three projects, okay? The projects that produce that impact can be listed on the right, and then the left part of the table can be joined, the rows can be joined together, and then you can now say this is the impact these three projects have caused at once, okay? So it's no longer individual mention. Then you can assess the impact using GIS and then also metrics like we've mentioned before, okay? Quantitative methods, qualitative methods, and most importantly, we can also look at carrying capacity. So if we are establishing an industrial park, how many industries can this place contain that it will not damage the environment substantially? That is the idea of carrying capacity assessment or analysis. Okay, so you now evaluate and then state the mitigation strategy. All right, so you develop shared mitigation strategy. For instance, if 3 projects, okay, cause an impact altogether, then mitigation should be in such a way that if you put a mitigation strategy, it can solve the impact that is generated by those 3 different projects all at once. Okay, so but all put together, there must be some level of adaptive management, all right, so that you'll be able to integrate what is going on with long-term monitoring, so that you monitor the environment uh, often and then identify whether you have to change strategy or not. Okay, so that's the idea of multiple projects. Kato, I don't know whether I've made the point there. Transfer.
Okay, so we will
There's
ask.
somebody. There's
We'll read
somebody
a
of
number of questions.
yes, there's somebody of concern here. He's raising his hand, but no name. I don't know whether that's professional or acceptable.
Okay, that
The
is a
name
problem.
is Technopop7. But I think I remember our rules state that when you are joining, you join with your name.
Your name. So there's a question here from Zungu.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
This is Nengi.
Okay.
For a development country like Nigeria,
yes,
where laws and policies are rarely ahead due to impunity,
yes.
how do we apply or enforce EIA effectively with entities or project managers without compromise? That is question number 1, sir. Let me go to I think that I should read 3 of the questions before you answer, sir.
Oh, okay.
How can we use EIA in mitigating natural disasters like flooding? 2,
okay.
Can we use EIA as a tool in disaster management and mitigation?
Okay.
From Philemon Ajoko.
Ajoko, all right. Okay, so these are 3 questions already.
Yes.
So let's do justice, beginning with Zugu. Okay, Zugu. Yes, your question is more of a behavioral problem than would I say an academic problem. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. That question is more of behavioral than academic. So the most important way of tackling that problem is if we can have a re-engineering of the mindset of the people. Now, I've always continued to say this. We are training you people, and then we are expecting that when you go out there, you are now ambassadors and change makers. Okay? So that by the time we look at the next generation that is coming up, we'll be able to say that, yes, okay, we have really developed a critical mass of professionals who will be able to stand their own, maintain integrity, maintain accountability and transparency, so that the impunity we see will begin to disappear. All right, so it's a problem of behavior and not academic problem. So we cannot say this is what to do. But this is a country where we've seen where even court rulings are disobeyed. Okay, so it's a behavioral problem. And I don't think any sitting in class for 20 hours a day can solve that problem. It's just a behavioral problem. All right. Then we go to Ajoko Philemon's question. Joko says, how can we use EIA in mitigating natural disasters like
yes,
flooding? I think the 2 questions are the same thing.
Almost.
Can we use EIA as a tool in disaster management? So natural disaster management and mitigation, I think they're about the same thing. So the answer I give can just serve for the 2. Now, yeah, natural disasters as we know, are not planned or envisaged, as the case may be. So, but to an extent, something like flooding, okay, is controllable. And it's controllable because flooding is a consequence of human activity. Okay. Now I will tell us a story, something I heard that happened. Uh, Sorry, somebody is okay. Somebody just dropped a question that I made a comment that now took me off the question. Can we go there?
Okay, drop it personally to you.
No. On the chat. Oh, I think there are lots of questions here. Okay, I've gotten it back. So it says, so like I was saying, I'll give us an example. There's a story I heard, and this happened in South Africa, where they were building houses in flood or in water channels, where water was supposed to take its natural course. They were busy allocating the land, and people were building houses. But there's a woman, an academic, who was vehemently against what they were doing. And she was outspoken. And she kept mentioning it, that what they were doing was wrong, that disaster will surely happen one day. But they ignored her, and they kept on allocating the land, and people were busy building. Until one day, it really happened. People died, people lost property, everything just gone. But you know, it's typical of Africans. You know what they called her? They called her a witch. Okay? So generally, flooding is not supposed to be a natural disaster, but it becomes a natural disaster when man-made activities. And these activities, like we've seen in this lecture, are related to population increase or population growth that now puts pressure on the use of natural resources. So once we now build houses in areas where water is supposed to take its natural course, of course, there will be flooding. Okay. Now, but since there is some level of impunity, and like I said, it's behavioral in nature, this land is allocated. All right. But we don't normally do EIA when we are building residential houses. Okay, because those are plots that are allocated for building generally. So EIA is originally meant for big projects that have significant impacts on the environment. All right, so EIA technically cannot be used to mitigate natural disasters. Rather, okay, we is indirectly can use it to mitigate natural disasters by conducting an EIA for probably like a drainage project that is meant to channel water to its natural course, but guide it to where it's supposed to flow to. Okay, so in that way, we can do an EIA. Okay, we can, I think that would answer both questions, if I'm not mistaken. Class F, there was somebody who raised his hand, I think KV or something like that, but he has gone off. So I don't know if you can search for him and bring him back so that it's an all-inclusive class. Then somebody is asking, Francis, your team B is asking, is EIA specifically for World Bank projects only, like this flyover project in Makurdi roundabout, Welcome roundabout? How can one confirm that EIA has been carried out prior to its commencement? Okay. Yes, I think generally that's part of the idea of transparency and accountability. I did ask And the engineers were telling me that, yes, what was supposed to have been done was they should have made a prototype picture of what is about to be done and then displayed it around that area for people to see. All right. But that was not done. But of course, there was enough planning prior to the start of that project. But for EIA, that one, nobody, I don't think I saw it. And, but probably, yes, there is. Maybe I can guarantee that. But since we have not seen it, there's no perfect answer. Okay. Then, who is this? Ikuta. Okay.
Ebega, there is Ebega Samuel Edwin. I want to
Okay.
ask,
All right.
EIA effectively, okay, he's more of a behavioral thing. If EIA is effectively practiced in Nigeria, if yes, how effective? Secondly, can you please throw more light on more environmental sensitive decision as an advantage of EIA?
Okay. But there's one before that coming from as at 10:30 that came from Van de Chia, and he says that what is the size of development that requires EIA? Because you will be living in a residential neighborhood, then a housing is housing is converted to a water factory.
Water factory, yes.
Okay, all right. So
Van de Chia.
Yeah, Van de Chia. Like I said, it's the scale of the project that determines whether you need an EIA. The scale and then the location. Okay, a water factory is generally not a large scale project. Okay, so maybe, of course, it would not produce serious discharge or waste that will warrant us trying to determine whether it's going to affect adversely or not. Okay, but again, regulatory agencies have the final say. So if they say they have approved its location there, then okay. But be that as it may, we also go back to the idea I was talking about, behavioral problems. Okay, so that is what we cannot really have an influence on. Okay, then yes. Okay, people are commenting that major projects they know have EIAs.
Yes, sir.
I think,
yes, sir. I think there are confirmations that.
Yes. Then we have one from Dugeri. Say when a project is to be sited and executed in an area where the residents are to be relocated, is there a legal document from the organization to the community before implementation takes place? I think this is not a one-way traffic, Dugeri. If there's going to be a project and the residents are going to be relocated, okay, it's not, okay, let me give an example. It cannot be that your father will tell you that you're going to marry a wife, okay, and then you don't even know the wife you are marrying. All you just know is that one day they bring a woman and then they say this is your wife, okay. So it's basically it requires that if there's a project to be carried out in a location and then it requires relocation, the people are already part of it because it is going to be participatory. They know the implications. They are told that, okay, this dam we're about to site in this area is going to cause flooding in these lowland regions where your people are. So we are going to move these people from these lowland regions to a higher region. Okay, that is the communication is there. It's not just a one traffic thing that we are bringing projects. So move. No, it's not done like that. Okay, you get it. Then oh, the proposed Trans-Saharan Highway from Ebonyi through
No,
Benue.
he's saying that he has.
Okay, all right.
So Mr. Nanev on the show.
Can we, yes,
Says,
can we?
what necessary measures can we take as individuals against an organization that has no EIA within a residential environment? What
Okay,
measures can we take as individuals?
yes. Please,
Yes.
let's just, this man has been up with his hand. I don't really, he's one gate.
Okay, one gate.
Moses.
One gate
Yes.
was a yes.
Let's hear him out first.
Mr. Wange, you can unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, mine is not a question, is a contribution.
Okay, go
Do
ahead.
I have the free floor to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Let's hear
sir.
you.
Thank you. I've been listening to a lot of questions from the chat, and I feel that I should also contribute a little thing I've known about this. You know, Nigeria is a member of the United Nations, and under the United Nations Charter, climate change is one of the problems that the United Nations is trying to solve. And that was why
Okay.
years ago, the United Nations had a conference and came up with COP29. And Nigeria being a member of this charter, Nigeria
Yes.
has laws that protect the environment. It's based on those laws that even organizations like establishments like ministries and some others that I cannot mention, that the government put them in place to carry out these functions. So when it comes to contracts, most contracts
Okay.
are approved by the government. One of the criteria or requirements for the implementation of such contracts is part of it is for the contractor to carry out or consult any agency to come up with EIA concerning that particular site on that particular project. So,
Okay.
if you remember yesterday, I asked a question that how deep has corruption affected the implementation of EIA? These were some of the things I was looking at because most times before those contracts are implemented, in the contract terms, we have the EIA, but the EIA, because of during implementation, is not done because of one corrupt activities or another. That's the reason why in some sites it looks as if there is no EIA on that side, but there is. It's the implementation that is always the problem because it's one of the due process, one of the requirements for such contracts. So MDAs, most MDAs are mandated by law to follow due processes
Okay.
as required. They are mandated to follow due process, but the problem most of the time is corruption. So when
Okay.
we look at it from that perspective, we will understand that corruption also is a major player in determining the implementation of EIAs or not. So that's my little contribution I have for this. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Powerful.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. There's a Nanif on the show who is saying what necessary measures. That's the one you read earlier, Ango, right? So it's what necessary measures can one take as an individual against an organization that has no EIA within a residential environment. Now, let me quickly add that most of the times within the context of Nigeria, we tend to suspect rather than base our arguments on facts. Okay, so the first thing I'll advise you to do is seek out to understand whether that organization within that residential area is supposed to carry out an EIA. Now go and also find out if they did carry it out. Where is it domiciled? Who is holding the document? It is when you have finally exhausted all this that you now say, okay, yes, you found out they don't have an EIA, but they are supposed to have one. Okay, now you now go to the regulatory agency and lay your case there. When you lay your case there, you can wait for the outcome. If there's no outcome, you can later follow up to understand why there's no outcome. So it's going to be a very long and tedious process if you're willing to go through that. Okay, and if possible, at the end of the day, it might even end up in the court of law. Okay. So question, does environmental impact assessment apply only to projects funded by the World Bank? I've also observed that most state projects, particular, okay, but I think this is belated. We have answered this long ago. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. I think so far so good. All the questions are answered. But there's one person who said he wanted to make a comment. Kavnen, I don't know whether he's there. Kavnen said he wanted to make comments. Is he there?
Kavnen, are you there? Kavnen.
Okay. If he's not there, I think we
just raise your hand up.
And if it's no longer, we have reached 11 o'clock. So I think there's a new one. Okay. Yeah. We have reached 11 o'clock. So I think we now close shop for this morning. We go on break. Then we come back by 1 o'clock to finalize the remaining part of the lecture, starting from assessment of the.
All right, thank you very much. Can we greet Prof?
Thank you,
can
sir.
all unmute and
Thank
say
you.
See you in the afternoon.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Great job.
Thank you.
God bless you, sir.
Amen.
Well,
Thank
job
you.
well done.
Thank you very much, sir.
Excellent class.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
See you all in the afternoon.
yes.
All in the afternoon.
Bye.